The small research lab buzz softly with the hum of machinery and the faint rustle of paper. Sunlight streamed through the tall, grimy windows, illuminating dust motes that danced lazily in the air, while a row of ancient tomes leaned precariously against one another, their spines cracked and faded. Belen Orin sat at her weather oak desk, fingers poised over a well-worn notebook filled with careful notations and sketches of symbols from an endangered language that sang of her ancestors. Outside, the majestic mountains loomed, their peaks draped in mist, a silent reminder of her heritage. The aroma of dried herbs and old leather mingled with the scent of fresh ink, creating an atmosphere both sacred and charged with purpose and plaisir. Belen pressed deeper into the memories of her childhood spent enveloped in her grandmother's stories. "You know, my grandmother used to say that every word carries a spirit of its own," Belen murmured, her hazel eyes centered on a delicate sketch of a bird in flight. The lines traced not just the contours of the creature, but the essence of freedom that resonated deeply within her. She barely knew the Ultric Rendell entrance, the soft creak of the door cutting through her reverie, until she felt the warmth of a steaming cup of tea placed before her. The earthy aroma wafted, gently coaxing her from the depths of her memories. Ulrich settled into the chair across from her, wisdom and worry etched into his face. "And what spirit does this language hold, Belen? Is it one of hope or sorrow?" His voice was gravelly yet soft, honed by years of guiding young minds. He leaned forward, light catching the flecks of silver in his dark hair, as if inviting her to dive deeper into the sea of her thoughts. Belen sighed, tracing the edge of her cup with her finger. "It holds over, I think. Each story is woven with joy and pain, like the fabric of our lives. I remember sitting on my grandmother's lap, listening to tales of our ancestors, feeling the rhythm of the words. It not just a language, yet a lifeline, a tether to our past." The weight of her convictions hung heavy in the room, mingling with the steam rising from their cups. Guilt stirred within her, knowing her passion for preservation often clashed with the world beyond these walls. Ulrich nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. "And what will happen if those stories fade, along with the words?" He leaned back, folding his hands over his belly, allowing silence to thicken the air with unspoken fears. Belen leaned low, urgency igniting the atmosphere. "I fear for the community, for our identity. If I fight to keep this language alive, we risk losing a part of ourselves." But her voice faltered, the tension of her conflicting loyalties palpable as she glanced toward the mountains, where shadows of doubt loomed larger than As the sun began to dip behind the mountain peaks, casting the lab into deeper shadow, the weight of their discussion lingered, thickening the air. Belen set down her cup, the warmth of the tea now a distant memory, her resolve solidifying. "Apurniputra in the ancient trees sad." It was a battle she was determined to face, yet uncertainty gnawed at her insides. Ulrich's gaze remained steady, a silent promise of support, but the mountain hound whispered of sacrifices to come. With the weight of history pressing upon her shoulders, Belen knew that her journey was only beginning, and the choices ahead would demand more than mere determination. The village square buzzed with life beneath the midday sun, a vibrant tapestry of color and sound enveloping Belen Orin like a familiar blanket. Merchants called out in the lilid tones of their endangered language, the melodies intertwining, echoing off the stone buildings that bore witness to generations of tradition. Stools adorned with woven textiles and fragrant herbs lined the cobblestone paths, enticing villagers and visitors alike. As Belen wove through the throng, the warmth of the sun danced on her skin, but a knot of unease twisted in her stomach. Laughter rang out, mingling with the gentle hum of conversation, yet a dark shadow loomed at the far end of the square. Ulrich Randall, the government representative, stood with an air of authority, his cold blue eyes scanning the crowd like a predator, sizing up his prey. That language is nothing but a barrier to progress, Ulrich declared, his voice slicing through the lively atmosphere. The crowd fell silent, the weight of his words settling heavily over their shared joy. Belen's heart raced as she listened, the sounds of her heritage twisted into weapons against her community. She could see worry etched on the faces of her neighbors, their love for culture morphing into fear. An elderly woman clutched her granddaughter Ascend, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and Belen resolve solidified. She stepped forward, urgency igniting a fire within her. "Ulrich, you don't understand, L.E." Belen shouted, her voice fierce, resonating with emotion. "Our language is our identity, our history. It's not just words, it's the bond that ties us together." Gasps rippled through the crowd, a collective breath held as they turned to witness this confrontation. Ulrich's brow furrowed, but a smirk played at the corners of his mouth, as if her passion only fueled his disdain. "You romanticize your heritage, Belen," he retorted, leaning in, his imposing figure casting a shadow over her. "But progress requires sacrifice. You should know that by now." The tension pulsed between them, each word a thread binding their fates in a struggle that felt all too personal. As the crowd murmured, a mix of support and uncertainty, Belen felt the gravity of her mission pressing down on her. Around her, voices rose in the language that Ulrich sought to restrict, weaving their love for culture into a collective declaration of defiance. In that moment, she understood that her task was not merely about preservation, it was about the heart of her community, the very essence of who they were. With renewed purpose, she took a deep breath, ready to rally her neighbors and challenge the looming threat. The stakes had never felt higher, and as the air crackled with tension, Belen knew this confrontation was only the beginning. The dim light of Belen's home office flickered against the walls, casting elongated shadows that danced across an expanse of meticulously organized maps and scattered notes. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and faint traces of cedar from the desk, where Belen furiously scribbled plans for a secret initiative, her desperate bid to rally community support against the cultural ban looming over them, like an ominous storm cloud. Outside, the soft rustling of leaves whispered a melody of impending change. Yet inside, the quiet hum of her thoughts was interrupted only by the occasional sharp intake of breath. A small tattoo of a bird on her wrist, barely visible in the low light, reminded her of the freedom she fought for, even as uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. The door creaked open, and Ulrich stepped in, his brow furrowed with concern as he took in the chaos of the room.
Ready to see your cameras in what?
Believe you're at it again.
You've been cooped up bed for days. You can't just scribble your life away on this.
This crusade.
It consuming you. His voice was a blend of worry and frustration, echoing in the stillness. Belen didn't look up, her pen scratching insistently against the paper. It not just a crusade, Ulrich. It our culture on the line. Every moment I waste could mean the difference between preserving our heritage or watching it vanish. Ulrich stepped closer, a shadow against the wall, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. But at what cost? You're isolating yourself.
You're isolating us.
What about the people who care about you? His voice softened, but the urgency remained, a plea masked in intensity. She paused, the weight of his words settling over her, like a familiar cloak. For a heartbeat, she considered turning back, but when she lifted her gaze, something flickered in her hazel eyes, determination mixed with the fear of loss.
I have to do this, Ulrich.
I can't stand by it while they strip away our identity. They need to hear the truth, even if it means sacrificing what we have. I won't hide anymore. The air grew charged as she made her decision, her resolve cutting through the tension like a knife. Hulik's face fell, disappointment etched into his features, but Belen's heart raced with a strange exhilaration. She could almost hear the voices of her ancestors whispering encouragement, urging her forward. "I'm going public with the plan tomorrow," she said, the words tasting sweet and bitter on her tongue. As Ulrich opened his mouth to protest, Belen turned back to her notes, the action a silent farewell to the comforts of complacency. The weight of her choice loomed heavy, yet she felt an undeniable spark of clarity igniting within her. There was her moment. There was no turning back now. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm hues of orange and gold across the sacred clearing, Belen stepped softly into the embrace of towering trees that whispered ancient secrets. The air, rich with the scent of moss and wildflowers, brushed against her skin like a comforting reminder of her culture. Each step she took on the soft, yielding ground felt like a silent vow to the language her grandmother had cherished. In the heart of this glade, she sought Ulrich Rendel, her mentor, a man whose wisdom was as deep as the roots of the trees surrounding them. The weight of her mission hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that mirrored the urgency of their discussion. Belen's heart raced with determination, yet a flicker of doubt lingered in her haggard eyes, casting shadows on the spark igniting within her. Belen found Ulrich seated on a gnarled log, his weathered hands resting calmly on his knees. The lines etched on his face told stories of resilience and wisdom. "You've come to share your play, I presume?" he asked, his voice as steady as the ancient trees surrounding them. Belen nodded, her pulse quickening. "I want to gather evidence of our language and decline and rally allies in the community. We must act before it's too late." Her words spilled forth, fueled by the urgency of her vision. As she spoke, the vibrant colors of her woven top caught the fading light, a symbol of her heritage that she was determined to protect. Hulik leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with interest. "Gathering allies is noble, Belen, but unity is fragile. You'll need to approach them with care. Many are entrenched in their beliefs, resistant to change." He paused, considering her earnest expression. "What do you think will persuade them to join your cause?" Belen hesitated, the weight of her friend's doubts creeping into her mind, but she forced the thought aside. "We must show them the beauty and necessity of our language. It not just words, it our identity, our history." A gust of wind rustled the leaves above and Belen felt a deep-rooted connection to every branch, every whisper in the air. Ulrich watched her intently, his expression softening. Passion is a powerful ally, but be ready for skepticism. The heart of your community must align with the purpose of your mission. Share your own stories. Let them feel the weight of what is at stake.
Gaze drifted toward the volcano looming in the distance, a silent sentinel over their cultural heritage.
She inhaled deeply, the mossy scent grounding her resolve. "I won't shy away from the challenge, Ulrich. I'll bring them together, even if it means confronting my friend's fears. I need this to work for all of us." Her voice, steady yet tinged with vulnerability, filled the clearing with a solemn promise, echoing the urgency of her mission. As the last rays of sunlight slipped away, leaving a twilight hush in the sacred clearing, Belen felt a shift within herself. Ulrich's guidance ignited a flicker of hope that danced along her spine, even as uncertainty loomed over her plans. She glanced back at the ancient trees, their gnarled roots weaving stories into the earth, and whispered a silent prayer for the strength to carry her mission forward. The weight of her choices loomed ahead, but with renewed determination, she was ready to face the shadows of doubt that waited beyond the glade. Tomorrow she would step into the heart of her community and confront the emotions that clashed within her, united in purpose or divided by fear. As the sun dipped low behind the majestic dormant volcano, the sacred clearing shimmered in hues of orange and gold, its lush carpet of moss and wildflowers cradling the weight of whispered histories. Ancient trees stood sentinel, their gnarled roots twisting through the earth, like the intricate narratives of a language on the brink of extinction. Belen stepped into the clearing, her heart drumming a relentless beat beneath her colorful woven top, each pulse resonating with a mix of hope and dread. She spotted Ulrich Rendell across the gathering place, arms crossed defensively, tension radiating from him as families and neighbors mingled, their voices a backdrop of ambivalence. This was not merely a community gathering, it was the stage for her risky proposal, a desperate bid to protect the very essence of their shared identity. "We've waited too long to act," Ulrich Belen urged, her hazel eyes glinting with determination. She stepped closer, the scent of damp earth and wildflowers enveloping them.
If we don't rally everyone now, the language.
Our heritage, it could vanish without a trace. We can't let that happen. Ulrich shifted his weight, the muscles in his jaw tightening. He looked away, studying the shadows that danced beneath the trees, as if seeking the courage hidden in the dark. And what if you fail? What if we lose everything trying to save something that not everyone even believes in? His voice, usually steady, wavered with a mix of anger and concern. Renne threw his tousled hair, a gesture of frustration that made Belen's heart sink. Belen felt the air grow thick between them, the cacophony of laughter and chatter fading into a muffled hum as doubt seeped into her resolve.
I got to stand by for what would go like.
These stories are worth fighting for. My grandmother, she dedicated her life to preserving them. How would I not honor that? Her voice quivered, the passion in it tempered by the weight of her allies' skepticism. And what about us? Ulrich shot back, his arms tightening around himself, as if to shield his heart from the conflict. You're asking us to risk everything for a cause that divides us. Not everyone thinks this is worth the fight. The words echoed in the silence that followed, casting a shadow on Belen's conviction, leaving her feeling vulnerable and exposed, as if she were standing on a precipice with the world crumbling beneath her feet. With the weight of Ulrich's doubts pressing against her, Belen took a step back, her resolve faltering like the last light of day retreating behind storm clouds. The urgency of her mission clashed violently with the fear of losing those she cared for most. Silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating, as the laughter of the gathering continued in the distance, oblivious to the fracture brewing at its heart. The sense of impending conflict loomed over Belen, urging her to solidify her stance. She swallowed hard, feeling the tattoo on her wrist burn against her skin.
Her in first pigeon piano from Ano hit her.
A heritage, her duty.
Tomorrow would demand more than words, it would require a reckoning. Belen stepped into her home, a modest sanctuary filled with the warm, earthy scents of spice and cedar, remnants of the evening meal that linger in the air. Sunlight slanted through the large window, illuminating the small collection of artifacts that lined the shelves, tokens of her heritage, each bearing stories untold. The low hum of the settling house seemed to aid the turmoil in her heart. She rubbed the tiny bird tattoo on her wrist, its ink almost vibrating against her skin with the weight of her decisions. Today's confrontation at the sacred clearing had left her reeling, the emotional fallout threatening to fracture not just her mission, but her bond with Ulrich. She could sense his presence before she saw him, a palpable tension that thickened the air as she crossed the threshold into the living room, his silhouette framed by the fading light. "You didn't tell me," Ulrich said, his voice low and clipped, as he stood by the window, arms crossed tightly over his chest. The fading sunlight cast shadows across his face, deepening the lines etched by concern and betrayal. Belen felt her breath hitch. His gaze was a storm, swirling with disappointment. "Not once did you mention your plans to rally the elders and take a stand." "I had to hear it from someone else." The weight of his words hung in the air, punctuated by the distant chirping of crickets that filled the silence between them. Belen shifted, her fingers curling active as your starter black.
It's your motive.
"I didn't want to worry you," she replied, her voice barely rising above a whisper as she glanced at him. Ulrich's eyes narrowed, the flicker of hurt reflected in their depths.
Worry me?
"Or protect your secret. You're obsessed, Belen. It all you think about. What about us?" His words struck Ick a blow, and she felt the fissure between them widen, the room comforting atmosphere, turning brittle, charged with unsaid grievances and unyielding loyalty. "This is bigger than of us," she insisted, her heart pounding against her ribs as she stepped closer, desperate to bridge the growed gap.
I'm trying to preserve something that's worth fighting for.
My grandmother teachings, our culture, it's slipping away. You have to understand that. Belen's voice cracked under the pressure, a vulnerable plea escaping her lips. But Ulrich only shook his head, the disappointment in his expression deepening. "And what about the costs? What about your friends? Have you even considered how your choices affect us?" His words were sharp, a reminder of the sacrifices she was making, leaving her grappling with the wreckage of their friendship. A deep silence enveloped them, the air thick with tension, as Belen turned away, her heart heavy with the realization that her mission demanded sacrifices she had yet to fully acknowledge. She could feel the familiar sting of guilt as she faced the window, the sunset painting the world dull in hues of longing and loss. Ulrich's reflection appeared beside her, and she knew their paths were diverging. The edge of their shared laughter now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the Vedas deep Neil. The edge of their shared laughter now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the Vedas deep Neil. Now saddeth. Their shared laughter now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the Vedas deep Neil. Now, any outstrake, what yokta, new I came, eclist. The ache of their shared laughter now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the Vedas deep Neil. Foka, new I came, eclist. Foka, I can't promise you anything, Ulrich, she finally murmured, the truth settling like a stone in her stomach. The shadows deepened, carrying the unbearable weight of uncertainty, as it stood on the precipice of a decision that might redefine everything they held dear. The tension hung, thick and unyielding, as the last rays of sunlight slipped beyond the horizon, draping the room in dusk. Belen swallowed hard, her heart a tempest of conflicting emotions, the choice weighing heavily upon her. Ulrich's presence, once a source of comfort, now felt like an unbridgeable chasm. With a final glance at the artifacts that told her story, she whispered, almost to herself, I have to try. For as Ulrich's silence enveloped her, a painful acceptance of the rift between them, and his shadows settled like old regrets, Belen turned back to the darkening window where the promise of tomorrow loomed. A day that would demand more than just her words. The air inside the stone stronghold was heavy with the scent of damp earth and moss, a stark contrast to the vibrancy of the sacred clearing beyond its walls. Flickering torches cast shaky shadows across the rough-hewn walls, and the faint tet of distant footsteps seemed to whisper secrets of power and control. Bilenorin stood at the threshold, her heart thrumming with a blend of determination and dread. The oppressive silence was punctuated only by the crackle of flames, underscoring the gravity of what lay ahead. Clad in fitted jeans and a colorful woven top that spoke of her heritage, she tucked a loose strand of dark brown hair behind her ear and squared her shoulders, steeling herself for the confrontation with Ulrich Rendell, the architect of her community's despair. The weight of her mission pressed down on her, a familiar burden that seemed to deepen with every passing moment. Ulrich leaned against a stone column, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips as he regarded her. "You think you can save what already lost? The new restrictions are in place, Belen. No one can speak the language without my permission. They're terrified to even whisper it now." His voice dripped with disdain, each word a calculated jab meant to hurt. The walls vibrated with the ed of his laughter, a sound that clawed at the walls of her resolve. Belen's fingers grazed the small tattoo of a bird on her wrist, a symbol of her struggle. But it felt weighty now. It too bore the burden of her ancestors' hopes. Belen took a step forward, her voice steady, despite the turmoil brewing inside her. "You think fear can silence us? You underestimate the power of our culture, Ulrich. We will find a way to keep our language alive, even if it means going underground. People will rise, even if they tremble at first." Her words ignited a flicker of defiance within her, softening the edges of her isolation. She felt the familiar warmth of the clearing in her chest, but it was shadow-ed by the chill of Ulrich's resolve, which wrapped around him like a cloak. Ulrich's laughter faded, replaced by a chill in the air that seemed to seep into Belen's bones. "You're alone in this, Belen. I've seen your friends pull away, their fear consuming them. The moment you chose to stand against me, you chose solitude. We think they'll follow you now." Each word was a dagger, twisting deeper into her heart, and she felt the weight of his truth settle heavily on her shoulders. The memories of shared laughter and warm camaraderie felt like ghosts in the shadows, haunting her resolve. "But I will find a way," she murmured, determination igniting a fire in her chest, even as she fought against the gross sense of isolation that pressed in on her. The flickering torchlight illuminated the lines of tension on her face, drawing a stark contrast between the hope she clung to and the despair that threatened to engulf her. She turned her gaze back to the doorway, the warmth of the sacred clearing now feeling miles away. The looming volcano outside stood as a silent witness to her struggle, a reminder of the strength within her community. With a deep breath, she whispered to herself, "I will not let fear win." The vow settled round her like a cloak, albeit a threadbare one, but it was enough for now, a fragile promise to herself and to the memories of those who had believed in her. As she stepped back into the shadows, her resolve fused with the weight of her isolation, an unyielding bond that would carry her forward into the depths of her quest, no matter the cost. As Belen retreated into the depths of the stronghold, the damp stone walls pressed in on her, a stark reminder of the challenge she faced. Loneliness licked at her heels, urging her to turn back, but she pushed through the shadows, heart pounding in rhythm with her defiance. She could almost hear the whispers of her grandmother weaving through the air, a reminder of the life pulsing beyond these walls, and for the first time, the uncertainty felt less like a weight and more like a spark. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating the path ahead with flickers of gold and fire, illuminating the promise of what could be, if only she could rally her community. Belen clenched her fist, grounding herself in the resolve that had been tempered by fear, the flicker of hope now grow into a steady flame within. In the heart of the ancient library, the air hung thick with the musty scent of parchment and the faint, lingering hint of incense, remnants of countless scholars who had sought wisdom in the labyrinthine aisles. Dust motes danced in the dim, flickering light of oil lamps, illuminating shelves that towered like the gnarled branches of an old tree, heavy with the weight of history. Belen Orin stepped cautiously between the crumbling stone columns, her fingers brushing against the scrolls wrapped in faded linen, each one a vessel of forgotten knowledge. A shiver ran down her spine, not from the coolness of the air, but from the realization that she stood on the brink of rediscovering her heritage. This sanctuary, where whispers of the past echoed the gentle reminders, was where her fluttering hope could be nurtured into resolve, if only she could unearth the secrets buried within. As she knelt before a low wooden table, Belen's hands trembled with anticipation. Carefully, she unfurled one of the scrolls, revealing intricate calligraphy that twisted and curled, forming phrases she had long believed were lost to time. "This is," she murmured. Her breath hitching, the words leapt from the page, filling her mind with images of rituals and songs, a tapestry of her ancestors' voices woven through the fabric of her being. She could almost hear the soft murmur of her grandmother guiding her, urging her to remember. If only the others could see this, she thought, the urgency of her mission igniting a fire within her chest. Together we could bring our language back to life. Her fingers glide over the ancient script, tracing the curves and angles, and if they were lifelines, connecting her to her community. But the joy of discovery was pierced by a sudden weight in her heart, a reminder of Ulrich Rendel's looming presence. She had heard his sneering remarks, the way he dismissed her passion as quaint and outdated. "It's time we move on," he had said, his cold blue eyes glinting with ambition. But as Belen recalled his words, a fierce determination took root. "No," she whispered fiercely to herself. "I won't let it erase our voice." She could feel the energy thrumming through the library, a chorus of forgotten souls urging her onward. With each scroll she examined, the resolve solidified within her. A plan began to take shape, one that might rally her community to fight back against the encroaching silence. But as shadows danced in the corners of her mind, she understood the risks that lay ahead. The fragile hope she cradled could easily turn to ashes in the face of Ulrich's greed. Belen stood tall, a fierce light glimmering in her hazed eyes. This discovery was not just an answer, but a challenge. She would confront him, armed with the very essence of her culture, transforming her fear into a rallying cry for those who shared her dream. The scrolls were not merely artifacts. They were a lifeline, an invitation to reclaim what had nearly been lost forever. The cafe hummed softly, a sanctuary from the bustling streets beyond, its air thick with the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee and the faint sweetness of pastries cooling on the counter. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced lazily in the afternoon light, while a gentle music box tune played in the background, lending a wistful air to the moment. Belen Orin sat at a small polished wooden table, her hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug, the warmth a stark contrast to the chill settling around her heart. She glanced at the door, her hazed eyes bright with anticipation. But to Ulrich Rendel stepped inside, his brow furrowed, his posture rigid. She felt the familiar pang of tension unfurling in her chest. Today, she would shade the weight of her newfound knowledge, but a shadow lingered in the corners of her mind, whispering doubts about the cost of that revelation. "You didn't tell me." Belen Ulrich's voice rose above the gentle clink of cups, slicing through the cafe's tranquil atmosphere. He threw his hands up in frustration, the movement causing a nearby patron to glance over with a raised eyebrow. How is that fair? The accusation hung between them, like a bitter fog, darkening Belen's resolve. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat, a knot of guilt tangling with her determination. Belen set her mug down, feeling the coolness of the surface beneath her palm. She met Ulrich's gaze, searching for the familiar warmth of their friendship, but found only a storm brewing.
I thought you would understand, Ulrich.
I didn't want to burden you with this until I knew. Until I was ready. It not just information, it the future of my culture, my grandmother teachings. Her voice trembled slightly, but she held firm, her fingers curling tightly around the handle of her mug, grounding her amidst the chaos. He scoffed off, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed tightly over his chest. And what about our friendship? What about trust?
You've been keeping secrets, Belen.
You act like you're the only one who cares about this, but what about me? What about what we share? The pain in his voice sliced through her, a reminder of the chasm opening between them, deepened by her silence and the weight of her mission. She felt the familiar sting of tears, but fought to blink them away, unwilling to show weakness. Belen inhaled sharply, the scent of roasted coffee filling her lungs, mingling with the sharp taste of betrayal on her tongue.
I'm doing this for us.
For everyone who'd been lost to the silence of our history. If you could just see an Ulrich expression hardened, an unyielding wall where once there was understanding. No, Belen, you don't get it.
I don't see you anymore. I see a stranger obsessed with the mission.
You're losing yourself in this quest, and I am, he faltered, his voice cracking, and she felt the final thread of their connection fray, unraveling before her eyes. The cafe began to fade into the background, the muted sounds of laughter and conversation dulling to an indistinct murmur. In my pain, Belen faced the reality of Ulrich's words. The world Dode felt distant, a realm where shadows of her choices stretched long and ominous. She bit her lip, fighting the urge to reach out, to pull him back into the warmth of their shared past. But the space between them felt insurmountable now. A chasm carved by silence and misunderstanding. As she watched Ulrich stand abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor, a sense of final lull washed over her, heavy with the weight of sacrifice. She had hoped he would understand, but instead she felt the pulse of her mission throb in her veins, a call to action that could drown out the echoes of her heart. With a deep breath, she steeled herself, ready to embrace the rising tide of her destiny, even if it meant walking this path alone. Belen stood alone on the mountaintop, the cool breeze wrapping round her like an old familiar blanket. Below, the valley sprawled like a patchwork quilt, woven with the greens of ancient forests and the golds of ripening fields, ill-bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The light splashed across her face in warm hues, contrasting sharply with the chill that crept into her bones. Here, amid the rugged beauty of the landscape, she felt the weighted and tethered to the earth, a paradox that mirrored her tumultuous thoughts. The echoes of her grandmother's voice reverberated in her mind, each word a reminder of the sacred mission she had undertaken, yet the emptiness in her chest deepened the solitude of her choice gnawed at her, a relentless companion in the moment of introspection. Belen's gaze drifted over the horizon, where shadows lengthened and dusk crept in, threatening to swallow the vibrant colors whole. Her fingers brushed the small tattoo on her wrist, a bird in flight, a symbol of freedom that now felt achingly out of reach. She clenched her hand into a fist, the short nails digging into her palm, grounding her against the rising tide of doubt. What had she sacrificed for this mission? Friends? Connection. The laughter shared over cups of tea and stories of the past. Each memory was a knife twisting deeper into her resolve, a relentless reminder of the cost of her idealism. As if conjured by her thoughts, Ulrich's voice broke through the silence, echoing from the trail that wound up the mountainside. I thought I might find you hid. His breath came out in puffs of white, the cold air betraying his fatigue. He approached, his brow furrowed, concern etched on his face. You shouldn't be alone up, Pid, not with everything that's happening. We need you with us, not lost in thought. The warmth of his presence enveloped her, yet it stung like a fresh wound, igniting the guilt that already clawed at her. Belen turned to him, her throat tight as she fought to shape the words that danced on her tongue. I'm not lost, Ulrich. I'm trying to understand what it means to fight for something that feels so far away. Every day, I feel the weight of my choices, the loneliness it brings. And yet, how can I abandon what left of my culture? The sincerity in her voice hung between them, a fragile thread that seemed to pulse with unspoken fears. Ulrich stepped closer, the distance narrowing, yet his gaze was heavy with an understand she hadn't expected, an acknowledgement of her inner turmoil that both soothed and unsettled her. The silence stretched, thick with the gravity of unasked questions. Ulrich reached out, brushing a loose strand of her dark hair behind her ear, a tender gesture that felt like a lifeline. You're not abandoning anything. You're carrying it forward, Belen. But you can't do it alone. Let us help you. Let me help you. His words were a balm and a burden, igniting a flicker of hope within her. Yet the shadows of doubt loomed large. She turned back to the valley, the fading light, painting a bittersweet picture of what could be lost, and in that moment, she realized her journey was far from over. It had only just begun. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sacred clearing transformed into a realm of shadows and warmth, the golden light spilling over the rugged slope of the dormant volcano like a promise. Belenorin stood at the base, her heart a drumbeat against the silence that enveloped her. The ancient trees, flanking the clearing tower at lake, sentinels, their gnarled roots entwined with the earth, like the stories she fought to protect. A gentle breeze carried the scent of moss and wildflowers, a stark contrast to the weight of her purpose. With the evening air thickening around her, she clutched the fabric of her colorful woven top, a thread of her heritage, grounding her amidst the encroaching doubt. This was it, the precipice of her journey, where isolation met the fervent belief that every step forward, no matter how solitary, was a step worth taking. Belen inhaled deeply, her breath mingling with the earthy aroma of the clearing, the familiar scents stirring comfort and trepidation within her. I can't do this alone, Ulrich, she murmured, her voice barely louder than the whisper of leaves in the wind. The shadows danced around her, and she felt the weight of her conviction pressing down like the dusk, heavy yet beautiful. The memories of laughter and shared dreams with her friends flickered through her mind, urging her to reconsider her solitary path. But the vision of her grandmother, a proud smile, a beacon of resilience, steeled her resolve. They will understand, eventually, she added, the words tasting bittersweet on her tongue. Rallying her courage, Belen stepped further into the clearing, her slender figure silhouetted against the vibrant colors of the sky. We face more than just the stronghold, Ulrich. It's the legacy of my people at stake. If I don't act now, everything will be lost, she declared. Her hazel eyes ablaze as they locked onto the distant silhouette of the stronghold looming against the twilight. The oppressive presence of the structure seemed to mock her determination, a fortress of doubt nestled within its iron walls, and she felt the urgency pressing like the cold breath of dawn. Ulrich stepped toe, the weight of his unyielding loyalty added in the way he moved. Belen, you're not alone, even if it feels that way. But charging in without a plan, reckless.
We need to strategize, gather support.
You can't carry this alone, he insisted, his voice a mixture of fervor and concern. He reached out, brushing her arm gently, grounding her amidst the swirling tempest of her thoughts. In that moment, the clearing felt both sacred and suffocating, each heartbeat echoing the conflict between her passion and her fear. The boundary between hope and folly blurred before her. Belen turned away from him, her gaze drawn to the volcano, its massive form a silent witness to her turmoil. What if I fail? What if I destroy everything I hold dear in this fight? She whispered, the vulnerability of her admission hanging heavy in the air. Yet within her, a flicker ignited. She would face whatever came next. Gathering her courage once more, she faced Ulrich, determination mingling with sorrow in her chest. I have to try. I believe it worth the risk. I can't let fear hold me back any longer. With a final glance at the stronghold, she felt the resolve crystallize within her. She would embrace her role as the protector of her culture, no matter the cost. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet she could almost hear her grandmother's voice echoing through the trees, a reminder that true strength lies in the embrace of one purpose. As the last light of day surrendered to the encroaching night, Belen squared her shoulders, her heart pound a fierce rhythm of resolve. The shadows of the ancient trees seemed to lean close, as if urging her forward into the unknown. Let's gather what we need, then we'll find allies who will stand by us, she said, her voice steady, carrying the weight of every decision she had made. The raw determination in her chest pulsed with each word, igniting a fire within her that she hadn't known existed. She turned toward the rugged path leading deeper into the valley, the horizon still aglow behind her. The battle for her heritage was only just beginning, the stakes higher than ever, yet she felt the profound truth of her mission flow through her veins like a lifeline. Even in isolation, her fight was worth it, and she would turn back. As the sun began its slow descent, casting a warm orange glow over the sacred clearing at the foot of the dormant volcano, an ethereal stillness blanketed the space. The ancient trees, their gnarled roots entwined the earth, seemed to lean in low, listening intently to the gathering. Belen Orin, standing tall and resolute, felt the soft moss beneath her hiking boots cradle her feet, grounding her in purpose. The scent of wildflowers would thin through the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of the volcano, a reminder of the heritage she fought to protect. Around her allies Zeth, their faces illuminated by the fading light, brimming with curiosity and unspoken fears, ready to lend their hearts to the cause that was now hers to lead. Belen scanned the group, her haggard eyes meeting those of her friends, some eager, others hesitant. She cleared her throat, letting the silence stretch, each heartbeat echoing in the stillness. We are here today, not just as individuals, but as guardians of our language, our culture. These stories we carry are not merely words, they are the very breath of our ancestors, the pulse that keeps us alive. Without them, we risk losing who we are. Her voice rang out, steady yet tinged with urgency, igniting a flicker of determination among her allies. But it more than just the words, Belen. Ulrich Randall stepped forward, his brow furrowed in concern. Our friends in the village don't understand. They think we're clinging to something that already slipping away. What if we're just fighting a losing battle? His voice dropped, and the weight of his doubt hung in the air like a storm cloud, threatening to overshadow her resolve. Belen felt her heart twist at his words. She crossed her arms, her fingers brushing over the tattoo of the bird on her wrist, a symbol of freedom she'd once found solace in. It precisely because they don't understand that we must fight harder. This isn't just about language, it's about identity. We owe it to our grandchildren to tell them the stories of our ancestors, to let them hear the language that once danced on their great-grandmother the tongue. The fervor in her voice built a bridge over the chasm of doubt, drawing her allies closer. The wise mentor, an elder with sun-worn skin and eyes like the depths of the forest, stepped forward, his presence calming. Remember, Belen, the strength of our community lies in unity. This battle is not merely against silence, it is for the heart of our culture. Together, we can ensure its survival. Each voice matters. Yours more than most, dear one. Trust in that power. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, a silent pact that resonated deeper than words, rekindling hope within the circle. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, casting the sacred clearing into shadow, Belen's heart surged with a renewed fervor. The embers of her allies' determination glowed brighter, igniting a fire within her that refused to flicker out. She took a deep breath, inhaling the rich scents of earth and wildflower, feeling the weight of their shared history, heavy yet exhilarating. It was not just her fight, it was theirs. With a nod, she summoned their resolve, ready to lead them into the darkness ahead. Yet a creeping thought gnawed at her. Would the bonds forged then withstand the trials to come? Only time would reveal if their collective strength was enough to shield the fragile legacy they sought to protect. The heart of the volcanic shrine pulsed with a simmering energy, the air thick with the scent of sulfur and wet earth. As the sun dipped behind the jagged silhouette of the dormant volcano, the sacred clearing transformed into a sanctuary of shadows and flickering light. Ancient trees, with their gnarled roots and whispering leaves, stood sentinel, guarding the collective memory of a culture rich and vibrant, yet under siege. Belen Oren, her dark brown hair cascading like a river down her back, stood at the center, her heart thundering as she faced Ulrich Rendell. The tension in the air crackled like static, heavy with the weight of her ancestors, urging her to speak, to fight for the legacy that was more than just words. It was the lifeblood of her community. Ulrich's eyes gleamed with a cold fire as he stepped closer, his presence a stark contrast to the warm, sacred ambiance of the clearing. You think your ancestors will rise to protect the past? They're nothing but shadows now, Belen. I will erase every trace of your culture, and there's nothing you could do to stop me. His voice dripped with disdain, echoing off the rocky outcrops, daring her to flinch. Belen clenched her fists, feeling the soft moss beneath her feet grinding her. The whispers of her grandmother's teachings buzz in her ears, igniting a fierce determination. She lifted her chin, defiance flashing in her hazed eyes. You underestimate the power of our stories, Ulrich, she shot back, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. They are woven into the very fabric of this land, as real as the roots beneath us. You can't silence them with threats. Our heritage will not fade into oblivion, because you wish it so. The wind rustled through the trees, almost as if in agreement, filling Belen with a fleeting sense of strength. She could almost hear the collective heartbeat of her ancestors echoing in the stillness, urging her on, giving her courage. But Ulrich was relentless, his gaze narrowing. You think your spirit is enough? They will turn against you. They always do. You're alone, Belen, just a girl clinging to fading echoes. Embrace the reality. Time to let go. With a swift motion, he reached for a stone from the ground, heating in its hand like a weapon. The threat hung in the air, tangible and suffocating. Belen's heart raced, but she refused to yield. She took a step forward, every inch of her body resonating with the voices of her community, their hopes and fears flowing through her. "No, I am not alone," she cried, voice rising with conviction. "We stand together, our voices intertwined, and I will fight for them, for us." As her words echoed, she felt a shift in the atmosphere, the weight of uncertainty lifting vertigo so slightly. The fire within her flared, a beacon against the backdrop of Audric's dark intention. She took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of her resolve, ready to act. The tension crackled, not just between them, but in the very air around the sacred site, as if the ancient spirits were waiting for her next move. In that charged moment, Belen understood that this confrontation was more than a battle between them. It was a fight for her community's very existence. The ground beneath her felt alive, pulsing with the energy of past generations, urging her to rise. With one swift motion she reached for a branch nearby, its rough bark grounding her as she swung it protectively in front of her lips. Hulix's sneer faltered, surprise flickering in his eyes. The night was far from over, and as the first stars began to pierce the twilight, Belen knew she had awakened something profound within herself. It was only the beginning. The stakes had risen, and so had her resolve. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ash as Belen stood at the edge of the volcanic cliff, the warm hues of the sunset casting a golden glow over the sacred clearing. The dormant volcano loomed behind her, its rocky slopes a stark contrast to the soft moss underfoot, an enduring sentinel of her people's history. A chill breeze whispered through the ancient trees, their gnarled roots weaving stories into the soil, stories she was sworn to protect. Ulrich stood beside her, his silhouette framed by the fiery sky, uncertainty etched across his features. This sacred ground, alive with the echoes of their ancestors, now felt starkly charged with the weight of Belen resolve. A bittersweet reminder of the friendship that hung precariously in the balance. Belen turned to Ulrich, her heart pound in her chest like the distant rumble of the volcano. "I can't let this go on any longer," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, quivering with the force of her emotions. "You know what this means for our people. If I don't take a stand, everything we've fought for will be lost. Even you and me," Ulrich brow furrow, the earnestness of her words slicing through the air.
You're talking about sacrificing everything for ideals, Belen.
"Our friendship, can't we find another way?" His voice rose, the anguish palpable as he took a step, desperation threading his words. The tension crackled between them, a raw electric charge as if the very ground they stood on might split under the weight of their choices. Belen's hazel eyes glistened, reflecting the fiery sky, and she pressed her palms against the cool stone of the cliff edge, drawing strength from the earth beneath her. "I wish it were that simple. But every day, I see our culture slipping away, like sand through my fingers. I can't be the one who stands by and does nothing, Ulrich." Her voice rang with the conviction of 100 voices, a chorus of those she was determined to honor, even at the cost of her own heart. Ulrich's silence was heavy, filled only by the soft rustle of leaves at the distant call of an eagle soaring overhead. His shoulders slumped as the reality of her words sank in, a wave of understanding washing over. "You're right. Maybe I don't understand completely. But I don't want to lose you to this fight.
You've always been my anchor, Belen.
Please don't let go of us." Belen stepped back, the distance between them feeling like an insurmountable chasm.
I am Ulrich.
"For my grandmother, for our people. It's not just about us anymore." The tears she managed to hold back began to spill, tracing paths down her cheeks, mingling with the last rays of sunlight. With each word, she felt the bond between them fraying, the threads of their shared laughter and whispered secrets unraveling in the twilight. Her heart arched, but the resolve was firm within her. "I'm so sorry." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky igniting in a riot of colors, Belen turned away, her heart heavy with the weight of her choice. Each step felt like walking through a dream, the ground beneath her soft yet unyielding, a stark reminder of what she was leave behind. Ulrich's silhouette blurred in the dying light, a haunting hubble of friendship lost to duty. She could hear the distant rumble of the volcano, a reminder of the power and urgency of her mission. With a deep breath, she embraced the path ahead, knowing it would be laden with sacrifice, yet fueled by a hope that whispered through her veins like the language of her ancestors. As dawn unfolded its soft light over the tranquil shores of the lake, the world felt in suspension, caught between night-lingering shadows and the promise of a new day. The gentle lapping of water against the pebbled shore created a rhythmic melody, mingling with the distant call of a morning songbird. Belen sat on a worn log, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns on her colorful woven top, a tapestry of her heritage woven into its fibers. Beside her, Ulrich Rendel, her mentor, watched the sun ascend with an expression that reflected that pride and melancholy. The air was crisp, imbued with the scent of damp earth and pine, and it wrapped them like a comforting shroud. A contrast to the internal storm swirling within Belen, she contemplated the sacrifices that had brought her to this moment. It's strange, isn't it? How the dawn can feel both an end and a beginning, Belen mused, her voice barely above a whisper. She gazed at the lake's surface, where the first rays of sunlight danced like flickering stars. She clenched her jaw, thoughts of a friend tugging at her heart. Ulrich turned to her, his weather-red face creased with wisdom. Every choice we make carries, Belen. You've felt that weight more than most. The fight for your culture is a noble one, but it not without its costs. Do you see that now? Belen nodded slowly, her determination battling against a tide of guilt. I do. I can't keep ignoring how my path impacts those I love. It just. How do I honor what we've lost without losing myself? Ulrich's gaze softened, the flickering sunlight catching the silver in his hair. By embracing the complexities of it all. Love and loss are entwined, just as the roots of those ancient trees behind us. You must forge your way while remembering those who stand beside you, not against you. Silence enveloped them for a heartbeat, the lake mirroring the tumult within Belen. Finally, she drew a deep breath, tasting the coolness of the morning air, now laced with resolve. I vow to honor my friend Ulrich and all the sacrifices that have been made. I won't let our language slip into silence. I understand now every word spoken is a step talk, preserving who we are. My fight is for them as much as it is for me. Ulrich studied her for a moment, the corners of his mouth lifting in a proud smile. Then let today be the first step. Speak the words of your ancestors. Let them echo across this lake and ring in the hearts of those who hear. It is time to gather your allies. You are not alone in this fight, Belen. Remember that. As the sun rose higher, casting golden reflections across the water, Belen felt a surge of energy pulse through her veins. The weight of the past still lingered, but with each new dawn came the chance to carve a different path, one that intertwined love, sacrifice, and the enduring spirit of her culture.